seen that when I create a list and it has some contents such as 1, 2, 3 or whatever, I can actually modify the contents of this list by accessing the index position of what I want to modify. So in this case, if I want to modify 2 to be something else, I would use the index position 1 and say that I want new value here to be inside of this list. And so if I print my list at this point, this of course is going to have new value in there. All right. After this line, the myList object has been changed forever. But tuples are a different type of data structure that cannot be changed. That's the primary difference. The way you access the elements in a tuple is exactly the same as you would access elements in a list. You can use slicing to get part of the elements from a tuple, but the main difference is you cannot modify a tuple. So let's talk about what a tuple looks like. So all you do with a tuple, instead of square brackets, you use parentheses. Okay, and now this is a tuple. So obviously we need to rename this because it doesn't make sense to call it a list. So we'll say it's my tuple. And so I can access the let me give it some more data here. I'll give it some string data, some data, and then I'll also put a list inside of here. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is a tuple that contains various elements. It has integers, it's got its strings, and it also has a list. So I can access these elements in the tuple in a similar way like I was before. So let's, for example, print the contents of the this list right here. So first I'd have to identify the index position of where that list is. So that would be, this is the 0th index position, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the index position of where the list is. So I could just do my tuple at 4. Okay, and run it, and there you go, we get that item. Now if I want to, for example, try to change these words to something else, let's try that and I'll show you why you can't do it. So let's do tuple and access that element. So that's the 3rd index position. That's going to give us this string. Now let's try to change it, and you're going to see the error that comes up. So I'll change this to other data. So I don't even have to print anything. This is enough for the interpreter to throw an error. And as a matter of fact, if you check the bottom left, all the way to the bottom left in tiny letters in your PyCharm editor, when you highlight this line, it's going to say that tuples don't support item assignment. Okay? As a matter of fact, it's highlighting this entire line on its own because it's giving us an error. It's giving us a warning before we compile or run anything. So let's run it so you can see the error, and there we go. We get the error, and it says tuple object does not support item assignment. Now you might be wondering, can I change one of the list items that are inside of a tuple? So we've got this list, right? That's inside of a tuple. Could I change the contents of the list? And if you guessed yes, you're right. That's what makes Python such a easy to use language and so powerful. So let's refer to the index position 4. That's where the list is. So index position 4. And let's say that I wanted to change the last value from 3 to something else. So I'll do that. So we access the index position 0, 1, 2. So at the second index position in the list is where 3 resides. So we'll put 2 that targets this number. And so now I can change this value to be something else. So new value. All right. And so let's print this, my tuple. So now we're going to print my tuple. Let's see if this works. Let's hit run. And there we go. Notice it works. We were able to modify the list that resides in the tuple, but we cannot modify the entire list. I couldn't do this. So here's a tuple. This refers to that actual list. I couldn't assign it to some other list, like 4, 5, 6. Can't do that. If I run this, of course, it's going to give me the same error. And PyCharm is smart enough to know that when you're accessing a raw index position of a tuple like this and trying to change it, it's smart enough to know that this is an error. That's why it highlights it. But when you access a nested element in a tuple, and that nested element is changeable, like a list, then it doesn't complain. Now, all the necessary methods that you would use on a day-to-day basis are the same in a tuple. Now, lists have far more methods associated with them you can use, but tuples don't have as many, but the necessary ones are there. For example, I just talked about the count method in the previous video. So I could do a count and check to see, how many occurrences of this data is in this tuple. All right, and that's going to give me the count, and then I could print that count so you can see what the result is. So it's of course going to just show 1 right here. But if I had multiple occurrences of this word, let's put another comma, and then now we have 3 occurrences of this data. So now it's going to give me a count of 3. Whoops, I got an error because I need a comma at the end of this. There we go. Now let's hit run again, and there we go, it gives me a 3. I can slice tuples like I do lists. So for example, if I want to just get these 3 elements, right, I could do my tuple and target those 3 elements. So 0, 1, 2, and so we start from the 3rd index position, and then we slice all the way up to 4, 5, 6. So we put 6 here, and that's going to give us these 3 elements, okay? Again, I'm giving a 6 because the second value of the range that you're going to is non-inclusive. That's why we have to go 1 over. And so let's run this, and there we go. We get some data. And notice this actually returns a tuple, right? That's what this returns. If I was to, instead of printing it out, any slicing that you do with a list, it returns a list. Any slicing you do with a tuple, it returns a tuple. So I'll just say str tuple to indicate that this is the strings or whatever, all right? And so I can print str tuple, and this is in fact going to be a tuple, all right? So let's hit run, and there we go. This is our tuple. And you can use the type method. Remember the type method that I introduced to you? Just to make sure that this is in fact a tuple, I could just do a type around it. This is actually known as the type function, okay? And this will give us the type. So let's run this, and notice the type is tuple or tuple, however you want to pronounce it. Let's go back here, and let's target the 4th index position, or wherever this list is. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It starts at the 6th index position now. So at the 6th index position, if I want to save this, then I'll say extracted. Let's see what extracted is, all right? So we extract the actual list right here. So let me get rid of this type. And so we're going to print the extracted, whatever that is. And so let's run it. Notice it returns a list, okay? So Python is smart enough to now not wrap parentheses around it. It wraps brackets because this is in fact a list. So it returns the correct data with its data type. So again, if I was to do a type function around this to check what type this data is, the extracted data, it's going to show list. Let's run, and there we go. Notice it says list. So play around with tuples. It's very similar to lists, except it's not mutable. So I could do my tuple dot, and here are the various methods that you can use. Okay, the main ones are count and index, and there are some other ones